Have you ever noticed how, like, a leader who is absolutely brilliant in a casual brainstorming session,
Oh, yeah.
you know, just radiating creativity, getting everyone super engaged, how they can turn into a complete and utter disaster the second a real crisis hits?
Right, it's like watching two completely different people.
Exactly. It's so weird. Like, in the morning, they're the visionary you'd follow anywhere. And then by the afternoon, when, I don't know, the servers crash or a major client threatens to walk,
But they're just causing absolute chaos.
yes, total chaos.
It's a jarring shift to witness, really, and it's something that confuses a lot of organizations, I think.
Yeah. Why is that?
Well, we tend to assume that if someone is a quote unquote good leader, that goodness is a fixed trait, like their height or their eye color.
Right, like it's just baked into their DNA.
Exactly. So when they fail in a new context, we think they suddenly, I don't know, lost their touch. Or worse, that they were an imposter all along.
But what if the problem isn't that they lost their touch at all? What if the very idea of a leadership style is just a complete myth?
That is the big question.
So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. I'm your host, and today we're taking a stack of your sources,
Yeah.
specifically focusing on extracting the most vital insights from this really groundbreaking 2026 management book,
Yeah, it's called El liderazgo como respuesta.
which translates to Leadership as a Response.
Hmm.
And that's by Juan Carlos Colomb.
Right.
Our goal here is to get you, the listener, well-informed quickly, stripping away all the noise to figure out what actually makes leadership work in the real world.
And you know, the primary mission for this deep dive is to completely deconstruct that myth of the fixed personality trait.
Let's stare it down.
Yeah, because the core argument we're exploring is that the biggest historical error in management, like across the board,
Yeah.
is confusing leadership with a personal vibe.
Right, like we constantly label people, oh, she's the empathetic leader, or he's the visionary leader.
Exactly. But instead of that, we're going to walk you through a framework today that proves true leadership is actually an adaptive architecture.
An adaptive architecture. I like that.
It's a direct, calculated response to the specific circumstances you are facing at any given moment, not a personality.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because, I mean, the idea that a leadership style is a myth, that goes against almost literally every business seminar I've ever attended.
Oh, totally. The whole industry is built on it.
Right. Usually you go to a retreat, you take a personality test, figure out your type, and then just lean into it hard.
Yeah, the classic color coding or four-letter acronym.
Exactly. But to understand why that approach fails, we first have to look at the environment that demands the leadership in the first place, right?
Spot on. And that's where the source material introduces this concept called the situational matrix.
The situational matrix.
Yeah, the premise is that you can identify the structural reality of any situation based on five distinct variables. Think of these five variables as like the invisible gravitational forces acting on your team. They dictate how you need to move. And those variables are urgency, risk, technical complexity, team autonomy, and the reversibility of consequences.
Okay, wait, let me jump in here. Because most leaders really only pay attention to urgency and risk, right?
Yeah.
Like, is there a fire and how much will it cost if it burns down?
Exactly. That's usually where the analysis stops. But the other three are just as vital.
So let's break those down because translating these, academic concepts into daily reality is where the real value is for you listening.
Sure.
So technical complexity. That's about whether the problem requires deep, specialized knowledge, right? Like if the accounting software completely breaks, the marketing director can't just jump in and fix it with like raw enthusiasm.
Precisely. You can't just motivate your way out of a coding error. And then there's team autonomy, which measures how capable and self-directed the people actually executing the work are. So if you have a team of seasoned veterans, your need to micromanage drops to basically zero. But if you have a team of, say, brand new interns, yeah, high autonomy there will lead to an absolute disaster.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
But I feel like the most overlooked variable here is that last one, reversibility.
Oh, 100%.
Meaning, can we undo this decision if we get it wrong?
Yes, exactly. So if a decision is highly reversible, let's say you're just testing a new color for a button on a website.
Right, easy fix.
You can move incredibly fast. If you get it wrong, you just change it back tomorrow. The risk is super low.
Yeah.
But if a decision has low reversibility, like pouring the literal concrete foundation for a skyscraper,
You can't just unpour concrete.
right, you have to slow down, you need multiple checks, immense precision, and a totally different leadership approach.
Okay, so let's look at how these variables actually combine into real-world scenarios. The text contrasts two very different environments. Let's call the first one as scenario A.
Okay.
This is high urgency and high risk. The servers are down, millions of dollars are burning by the minute, and the consequences are highly irreversible.
A literal nightmare.
Exactly. This situation structurally demands clear, centralized direction. It requires brief, functional communication. It's a fire drill. You don't ask people how they feel about the fire.
No, you point to the exit.
Right. You point to the exit.
And that functional directness, that bossiness, if you want to call it that, is a feature, not a bug, of that specific environment.
Yeah.
Now, contrast that with scenario B. Let's say it's low urgency, low risk, high reversibility. You are designing a new internal review process for the next quarter.
Plenty of time.
Exactly. Now, if you apply the scenario A playbook here, if you're just pointing at the exit and barking orders, you're going to crush all the innovation in the room.
Because scenario B absolutely demands debate.
Right.
Participation, exploration.
Yes. The gravitational forces are totally different, so the architecture of your leadership must change to match it.
And this really highlights what the book refers to as the pathology of the permanently participative leader.
Oh, this is such a good concept.
Right. If you take that scenario B leader, the one who loves a whiteboard, who wants everyone's voice to be heard, let's get in a circle, and you drop them into the scenario A fire drill.
They cause an absolute catastrophe.
Yeah. They're literally trying to build consensus when the room is filling with smoke.
And, it is vital to understand that they aren't failing because they are incompetent or malicious.
Right.
They are failing because their fixed response is just completely misaligned with the structural reality of the matrix. They are trying to solve a physics problem with poetry.
I love that. It makes me think of wearing a tuxedo to go scuba diving.
Okay, I like where this is going.
It's a beautifully tailored outfit, right? You look fantastic on land,
Yeah.
but you are in the completely wrong environment. The ocean doesn't care about your tuxedo.
No, it does not.
You are going to sink, and you are going to look absolutely ridiculous doing it.
That is the perfect visualization of the fixed style, the tuxedo. A true leader has to ask, what type of situation am I facing right now, before they ever ask, how should I lead today?
Yeah.
The environment dictates the response. You diagnose the matrix, the urgency, the reversibility, the autonomy, and then you build the leadership approach to match those exact demands.
But okay, that brings up a massive operational issue, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if adapting to the context is literally everything, why do so many smart, highly experienced leaders totally misread the room? Why do they think they are safely in scenario B asking for opinions when they're actually in scenario A and the building is burning?
Well, that's because human perception is a deeply flawed construct.
Flawed how?
A leader never actually acts on objective reality. They act on their internal interpretation of reality. And under high pressure, our cognitive bandwidth degrades rapidly.
Meaning we get overwhelmed.
Yeah. The brain simply cannot process the massive influx of chaotic information, so it starts taking shortcuts.
It defaults to survival mode.
It does. When urgency and risk spike, the brain forces the leader to rely on cognitive biases. We see confirmation bias, where a leader only notices data that proves what they already suspect to be true.
Right, ignoring all the red flags.
Exactly. And we see anchoring, where they get stuck on the very first piece of information they receive, even if later data completely disproves it.
Oh, that happens all the time.
And, most dangerously, we see overconfidence. The pressure makes them retreat into whatever framework they feel most comfortable with, regardless of whether it actually fits the matrix.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me push back on that a little bit.
Sure, go for it.
Isn't trusting your gut that instinctual snap decision?
Yeah.
Isn't that considered the hallmark of a great, confident leader?
Mhm.
I mean, we culturally celebrate leaders who just know what to do without needing all the data.
We do celebrate it
Yeah.
in movies, but it is a very dangerous myth in actual management.
Really?
Yeah. The vital distinction here in the book is that subjective internal certainty is absolutely not evidence of external accuracy.
Okay, meaning just because I feel incredibly confident that I am right doesn't mean I'm actually right.
Exactly. You can feel 100% confident in your gut and be driving the company directly off a cliff. Some of the most disastrous historical decisions were made with absolute, unwavering psychological certainty.
So how do you fix a flawed lens then? If we can't trust our own confidence, what is the mechanism for perceiving reality accurately?
Well, the solution provided in the research is something called the 99% perception wheel.
The 99% perception wheel.
Yeah, it's a system of 10 trainable capacities designed specifically to reduce perceptual error. It completely removes the reliance on genius or gut instinct.
And replaces it with a system.
Right, a disciplined mental system. And two of the most critical capacities within this wheel are metacognition and probabilistic thinking.
Okay, metacognition. Let's translate that for everyone. That essentially means thinking about your own thinking, right?
Yes, it is the ability to step outside yourself and observe your own thoughts in real time. A perceptually precise leader actively asks themselves out loud, what am I assuming right now?
Checking their own blind spots.
Exactly. They ask, what evidence exists that contradicts my current reading of the room? They don't just accept their first impression, they interrogate it.
And what does probabilistic thinking look like in practice?
Well, instead of falling into the binary trap of I am right or I am wrong,
Which is very ego-driven.
super ego driven, instead of that, you ask, what is the probability that my interpretation is valid based on the current data? It shifts your mindset away from defending yourself.
Oh, I see.
So if you say, I am 70% sure this is a server outage, you are inherently leaving 30% of your cognitive bandwidth open to the possibility that it's actually, say, a cyber attack.
Right. It keeps your perception flexible. You're not locked in.
Exactly.
But so if gut instinct is mostly a myth, what about that expert intuition we always hear about, when a seasoned firefighter walks into a building and just knows the floor is about to collapse?
Right. Well, what we culturally call expert intuition is actually just highly sophisticated operational memory.
Operational memory.
Yeah, it is not magic. It is a massive internal database of recognized patterns built from years of consciously analyzing past errors.
Ah, so the firefighter recognizes a specific sound.
Or a change in heat that matches a past failure, exactly. But the framework warns that even that highly tuned operational memory needs to be questioned when the pressure is on.
Because novel situations will break old patterns.
Exactly.
All right, so let's say you've done the work. You've used your metacognition, you've calculated the probabilities, and you have actually accurately perceived the situation. You've diagnosed the matrix. You don't just jump straight into action then, do you?
No, not at all. And this is the next major hurdle where organizations stumble. You have to intentionally design the mechanism of the decision. The research breaks down the sequence of every single organizational action into 4 steps:
Which are?
signal, interpretation, decision, and execution.
Okay, here is where I think it gets really interesting. Because when the framework says decision, it doesn't just mean picking option A or option B, right?
Right. The choice itself is only a tiny fraction of the decision. Deciding means defining the entire architecture of the action.
The architecture.
Yeah, it means defining the speed at which the team must move, the margin of error you can tolerate, and the exact level of team participation required to get it done.
Okay, I think of this like planning a trip. Deciding isn't just saying, hey, we're going to Chicago. It is choosing the vehicle based on the environment.
Perfect analogy.
Like, if the urgency is sky high and the risk is critical, we are taking a nimble 2-seater sports car. Not everyone gets a vote on the playlist. We aren't stopping for snacks. We just need to hit top speed.
Yep.
But if the urgency is low and we need high team autonomy and buy-in for a long-term project, we rent a massive bus. We look at the map together.
That captures the mechanics perfectly. The fundamental rule of the decision architecture is you don't just decide what to do. You decide how the decision must be made based on those matrix variables.
Right.
If you take the massive democratic bus when the situation demands the sports car, you fail.
And this perfectly explains a specific organizational pathology highlighted in the text, which is the avoidant leader.
Yes.
This is the leader who looks at the complexity, feels the uncertainty of the matrix, and they just wait. They delay the decision to gather more data.
And the tricky part is that delay is often framed as prudence or caution. Oh, we're just being careful.
Right.
But avoiding a decision because you are uncertain is not hitting pause. It is, in itself, a highly costly decision.
Because time doesn't stop.
Right. While you wait, the situational variables are compounding. Urgency is increasing. Risk is likely increasing. A leader must structure the how of the decision, the vehicle, even if the ultimate destination is still slightly blurry.
You have to put the team in the sports car so you're ready to move.
Exactly.
So let's look at the final step of the sequence.
Okay.
Execution. We've diagnosed the matrix, we've managed our perception biases, we've built the perfect architecture for the decision, but then the team just doesn't do it.
Right.
The execution collapses. Why does that happen?
Well, this brings us to perhaps the most hidden trap in organizational dynamics. You can have perfect perception and perfect decision architecture, but if your team lacks the specific functional energy required to pull it off, the execution will still fail.
And this introduces the E5 model, which totally reframes how we look at burnout. I mean, organizations constantly mistake exhaustion for a human or motivational problem.
All the time.
They assume people are just lazy or they don't care about the company vision anymore.
When in reality, the exhaustion is almost always structural.
Structural.
The E5 model breaks human capacity down into 5 distinct energies: cognitive, emotional, physical, operational, and moral. To execute any task, a team draws on a combination of these pools.
Okay, let's define those because this is crucial for anyone listening. Physical energy is straightforward, right?
Mm.
Sleep, health, baseline stamina.
Yeah, basics.
Emotional energy deals with interpersonal dynamics, stress management, resilience.
Right.
Moral energy is the team's belief in the mission and alignment with the company's values.
Then you have cognitive energy, which is pure mental processing power, literally the bandwidth available to solve complex problems.
And finally, operational energy,
Yeah.
which is what exactly?
This is the friction in the environment. How hard is it to actually get the work done using the tools and processes the company provides?
Right. And there is a fantastic case study in the source material that illustrates this interplay perfectly.
Case study 3.
Yes, a highly competent team with a great track record suddenly sees their performance just drop off a cliff,
Yeah.
deadlines are missed, careless mistakes are being made.
And the initial diagnosis from upper management was exactly what you'd expect, a motivation issue.
Of course.
They assumed the team's moral or emotional energy was depleted. The typical corporate response would be to, schedule a motivational pep talk or a team building retreat or to just lean on them harder.
Do some trust falls.
Right, exactly. But the E5 analysis revealed a completely different structural reality.
What was it?
The team's emotional and moral energies were actually completely fine. They liked each other, and they genuinely wanted to do a good job. What was fundamentally degraded was their cognitive and operational energy.
No.
When the leadership looked closer, they realized the team was suffering from severe information overload and constantly changing priorities. That drained the cognitive energy.
Noise your noise.
And they were bogged down in incredibly friction-heavy processes requiring 10 different software platforms and redundant approvals just to complete a simple task.
Which drained the operational energy.
Exactly.
So their brains were literally full, and they were trying to run through molasses.
Yes.
So the fix wasn't a motivational speech about giving 110%,
Yes.
because you can't motivate someone out of a cognitive bottleneck.
No, you cannot. The fix was structural. It was simplifying their workflows and removing the operational friction. Once the leader cleared the administrative hurdles, the performance bounced right back.
Wow. It is such a profound shift in perspective. You cannot solve a structural problem with an emotional solution.
Never. A leader's job is not just to demand energy from the team. It is to actively protect and manage those 5 energy pools.
So if you